Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Sarah White. I'm Lakefront Planning Coordinator with the Chicago Park District, and I want to thank you for being here tonight to talk a little bit more about progress on the Midway East End improvements. Please get seated. We're going to start the meeting now. Tonight, we're going to provide an update, collect comments, and respond to questions regarding the design of the east end of the Midway Plaisance. But before we get started, we're going to welcome Tiara Hughes from SOM to provide a quick introduction to the Jackson Park Plan for Interpretation project. Tiara?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I am, as you mentioned, Tiara Hughes with SOM. Also a very proud Woodlawn resident. I live right around the corner. So I'm very, very excited to talk to you guys tonight about the Jackson Park interpretation plan that we're going through right now. So this is just the first meeting, the intro. We will have kind of multiple touch points, but this is really ultimately about us hearing from you. So we want to understand as a community, what do we want to see in this space? What do we want to celebrate and elevate? What voices, what histories, what cultures? And so, as you can see here, you guys are familiar with the space already, but this is sort of the highlight. So is it going to be sculpture? Is it going to be art? Is it going to be signage? Again, the histories that we want to focus on, and that's chronologically speaking. So from the very beginning, right, pre and post-industrial era through to the current age. And us who are residents now living here, our parents, our grandparents, like what did they deem important for our area and what we want to include. And so this is what that visually looks like as an example here. Could be, again, signage, could be forms of art, could be QR codes, which can change throughout time. Updates happen to those codes throughout time. Really kind of sculptural moments of celebrating people, also places that are important to the surroundings. And then last, but certainly not least, I wanted to touch on the process. I mentioned that today is really the introduction. This is not the last time that you will see me, hear from me, and get to talk to me about the space, about the interpretation that you want to see. After this intro, we'll meet a few more times throughout the summer, and then we'll come up with sort of a guide that future designers will get to use as they're creating those last kind of examples that you saw for the space. So we're excited to introduce this to you. We're very excited to be here today. We have a table right out here. We would love some feedback from you. We have sticky notes. We'll have myself and my colleague Chris here tonight to answer any questions that you might have as well.
Great, thanks, Tiara. I'm moving this here because I feel like we're hunched over this podium right now. So that's a little bit about what we're getting started on the Jackson Plan for Interpretation. I hope you stop by the table outside on your way out, learn a little bit more and leave any initial feedback. There is a project website for that project as well on the same featured capital improvement project page as the Midway project. So if you're checking out Midway, please check that out as well. We will keep posting regular updates on the project and ways that folks can interact. Now I'd like to introduce Heather Gleason, Director of the Department of Planning and Construction at the Park District, to lead us through the Midway presentation. Just want to remind you there will be an opportunity for questions and comments following the presentation. So please hold your questions until that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very wet evening. As you can see, we provided plenty of seating for you. I hope folks are still going to trickle in, but we wanted to make sure that we went back to in-person meetings. It's been a really long time. For those of you who have been at public meetings with us in this room, we have packed this place. So wanted to just welcome you and thank you for spending some time with us this evening. I want to go through a little bit of our agenda this evening. This is actually our second meeting on this particular project, which is the east panel of the Midway Plaisance. Our first meeting was a virtual one, so I hope some of you were able to attend that. It was held on March 29th. If you did not have an opportunity to attend that meeting and want to go back and look at the recording, it is on our website, so that is still available. We did get quite a few comments, both during our virtual Q&A, which a lot of you participated in, as well as afterwards on our comment page. So the team that we have for you tonight will address many of those common issues that we heard coming up during that March 29th meeting. And we want to make sure that we address some of those this evening for you. For instance, some of you wanted to discuss this evening some of the project background, which we have Eilish Tuppy from the Department of Planning and Development at the city who will cover for us. We received several comments in opposition to the Midway as a replacement area for the open space. And so we'll have Eilish explain the federal process and kind of how we got to that decision. Then we also heard several things that the community was interested in us sort of keeping in mind as we were exploring the design of this particular space. So recognizing the historic elements that are already in the space, keeping the playground at a smaller scale, sort of commensurate with the scale of the space today, using a naturalistic approach to the design, and then providing an open and accessible play space. Something else that came up quite frequently in that first meeting was that the community actually uses that space year round. And so to make sure that we were considering the seasonal uses, a lot of people said that people like to sled in that area. And so we wanted to keep in mind some of the winter recreation opportunities as well as we go forward. So here this evening from Site Design is Rob Royland, who will go through the site program, and Hana Ishikawa, who will walk us through two design concepts that will address some of these things that we heard at our first meeting. And then lastly, as you heard from Sarah, Sarah is going to moderate our Q&A this evening for the last hour or so of the meeting. So really briefly, I just want to mention how site was chosen. We kind of went through this at our last meeting, but just to let folks know, they were chosen as a design project lead for this project through a public target market request for proposal project at the Park District. That means that only firms with 50% of the total contract lead basically had to be represented by either a minority-owned business or a women-owned business or a joint venture of the two. The project team that site has put together, as you can see sort of some of the companies there on the right, is made up of 100% certified minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses. And so we're really happy to have them on board and excited for them to be part of this project and share some ideas with you about this space. And at this point, I will turn it over to Eilish to talk a little bit more about project background.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Eilish Tuppy. I'm a coordinating planner with the Department of Planning and Development. And we are the agency that has been bringing the OPC project through the approval process. And also, we are also in charge of monitoring the mitigation measures that were put in place as a result of that federal regulatory review process. And it was a very lengthy and involved process, as many of you know, but to boil it down very simply, the reason why we entered into the federal review process is because of Jackson Park and the Midway's designation on the National Register of Historic Places. It was listed back in 1972. And then as a result of the proposal to build the OPC in Jackson Park, a mandatory review process kicked in. And that process took place between December 2017 and it concluded in December of 2020. That review required the Federal Highway Administration, who were overseeing some of the proposed road changes, to work with the National Park Service and assess what the impact to the park would be and come up with a process for the community to participate and have discussions over what types of reasonable modifications and mitigation could help mitigate some of the impacts that were determined to be occurring as a result of the project. That is something that is not uncommon. There are projects that do create an adverse impact, and that's why this system is put in place. And on the backside of it, the idea is that the community will get some benefits out of this public process. So the website that is there, and this slideshow, by the way, will be posted on the Park District's website. So you can go and click on that live link or maybe snap a picture with your phone. There were 11 meetings over a 3-year period, and we generated ideas for the mitigation measures, which is what Tiara just started to outline for you all, and we'll move into that in the future. And then we circulated a draft memorandum of agreement to all the consulting parties for public comment. So the memorandum of agreement is the legal binding document that is the result of that federal review process. So I know that we had a lot of discussions, very lively, over this multi-year process. And at the end of it all, the MOA is really the document that we as staff people are obligated to see through. And there are specific benchmarks and timeframes that we need to get the mitigation measures done by. So that's really what we're here implementing. We finalized that memorandum of agreement in December of 2020, and the final document is available on both DPD's and the Park District's websites. And the MOA, like I said, is a legally binding document. And this is a list of the 97 consulting parties who signed on to the MOA and were involved in that 3-year process. So as you can see, there are very many people. Some of you are in this room, so thank you very much. And where we are now is the result of that were 8 different mitigation measures. The one that's outlined in orange is the one that we're here to discuss with you today. And that is the design review of the recreation replacement land at the east end of the Midway Plaisance. So even though I know a lot of you know this area, just in case there's folks who are participating who don't know exactly the site that we're talking about, the east end of the Midway, we're only looking at that discrete area that's east of the railway tracks. So it's west of Stony Island and east of the railway tracks. And the red outline on the right-hand side of this is the footprint of the proposed OPC. And in order to mitigate the lost square footage, the requirement was to find a comparable recreational space within a reasonable distance of the actual affected site. So in a process that was vetted through that whole federal review over 3 years, the site that was landed on was the east end of the Midway Plaisance. And right now it is, there are drainage issues, so the usability is compromised because of that. And the idea was that this could be improved to help make up for some lost recreational space by making this more usable. And the project scope, first public meeting we had almost 2 months ago, I guess, March 29th. And as Heather said, that was the virtual meeting. So we're happy to be seeing your faces in person again. And once the plans are prepared with your input and we do a draft design, there's the 45-day consulting party review period, during which time we can accept public comment, and the team will take that back and work it into revisions as necessary. And the city and the Park District will not begin construction on this until after we receive the written concurrence from the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office in Springfield. So the Park Service and the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office are in touch with us every step of the way through this whole process. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob from Site Design to go into some of the design details.
Thank you so much. So as Alicia mentioned, we have to go through a process, right, that involves the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office, and a lot of that has to do with review of what we're planning on doing. And so one of the things we want to go through first with you as a group is the site program. We talked about this a little bit at the last public meeting, but because of the nature of the site and where it's located, there's a lot of historical fabric that we need to think about as designers when we're going through this process. And so this diagram here up on the screen starts to represent some of the elements that we're going to be incorporating into the design to help build our program and framework for the space. And I think one of the most important things when you think of the Midway historically are the historic tree alleys that line the Midway. And so one of our first steps that we're going to be working on is reestablishing that alley. So right now there's some gaps within that alongside the park space. They need to be fixed. There's some trees maybe that need to come down, but we're going to be rehabilitating and bringing the Midway alley, historic alley trees back to their former glory. In addition, we're going to be looking at providing some ornamental plantings at the corner. And then historically, there was a north-south access just east of where the railroad embankment is. And so we're going to provide that access again as a part of our future designs that we're going to be showing you here tonight. Additionally, we have the Cheney Good Memorial, which we will be doing some work with to, again, bring that back to life. I think we want to, first of all, get rid of maybe some of that black paint that's on there. But that's a really important and significant monument to the site and something that we really want to celebrate in the design and something that you're going to hear a little bit more about from Hannah here in a minute as it relates to what we're talking about for our proposed work. So from a framework standpoint, one of the things that we really want to try and do, and I think Alicia and Heather made it abundantly clear, but from the feedback that we received from you all earlier, is really make sure that we're maximizing the public open space and the general open space within the site. And so as you see here on the screen, this kind of central space right here, the desires to have that remain open and flexible, right? There's a lot of community uses that are going on out there right now, and we don't want to interrupt that. So any sort of playground improvements or park physical improvements we're looking at doing, we're going to be focusing that back here to the west. Additionally, we talked about providing the north-south access through the reestablishment of the historic tree alley, and then additionally making sure this is relatively axial in its nature and symmetrical, right? The Midway is such a symmetrical element, and that's something that we need to respect and that we will be called upon to reinforce and that design element as we go through the review process with the National Park Service and the State Historic Preservation Office. So that's kind of the framework that we're working within. I think our biggest design charge that we're working on right now is this idea of incorporating a universal design play space. We went through a pretty long dissertation almost about that at the last meeting. I want to just kind of go over a quick little summary of that. So when we talk about universal play, there's kind of three big things that we want to accomplish, right? So we want to provide a play environment that's free of any social and environmental barriers for people, right? And we want to allow for people of all abilities. And so this is brothers and sisters and friends, everything. It's not just people that are potentially disabled, it's everyone. It needs to be very inclusive. So in addition to that, we want to provide opportunities for people of all abilities and all ages to play alongside with each other, right? And then we want to provide acceptable risk. This needs to be something that's challenging for the visitors of the play space. And so these are kind of our three overarching goals and principles that we want to work towards as we get into the design. When we look to who are really designing this for outside of those three principles, right, there's kind of three groups that this really starts to fall in with. And those are folks that either suffer from maybe a mobility or a physical impairment, maybe a sensory impairment, or maybe an intellectual impairment. So each of those different groups has much different needs. And so you can't just design like, well, here's the wheelchair ramp and you're going to go up here and there's the slide and that's it. Everyone has a different set of needs that need to be addressed within the play space and within the park. And that's something that we're going to be really trying to hone in on over the coming weeks. I think we've got some really interesting concepts here to show you that. And what's so exciting about this is trying to figure out where there's overlap with the design elements. And so we kind of actually created this matrix here, and you can kind of start to see all the different things that we're trying to address, right? Whether that's providing comfort, or refuge, or flexible spaces, or thinking about capacity for maybe someone that might have autism. There are overlaps though between sensory impairments or intellectual impairment or mobility. And we want to really make sure that we're maximizing our play environments, I think, at those overlaps, right? Because I think that's a great opportunity to bring all of these visitors together on the play space. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hana Ishikawa, our design principal, and she's going to walk through the designs of the two concepts we've prepared for the play space.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We are very excited to present these two concepts. We've been working on them for a while, and they're very exciting to us. I am Hana Ishikawa. I'm a design principal at site. We are here joined by Rob and Sophia, and also Ernie, who's our founding principal as well, and Paul. Finally, our two concepts. So I think to start, there is a statistics out there that about 1 in 4, one household out of 4 has someone living in their household that has some sort of impairment. And so designing for all of these groups is super crucial. And of course, when it comes to children or youth or our elderly, we really want someone to be felt inclusive in this play space. And so one of the ideas that we really thought about is that we would have a series of pathways, a series of ribbons. These are meandering walkways, things that have textures, things that have sound, plants that might change. You imagine how you played as a childhood, and you really think about it. And what people remember aren't necessarily perhaps the slides and the jungle gym that looks like all of the rest, but the times you played in a river or you climbed trees, those environments are really lacking when we're living in a city. So how do we make those types of play environments when we are really confined to a smaller space? And so what we have thought about are these ribbons that perhaps have different abilities. And so the blue ribbon may be where if you're really young or you have mobility impairments, that's where you might be able to go. Yellow might be a different ability, and the pink might be a different ability. But really what happens is when these spaces intersect, we'll create these nodes that are really gathering places or play environments that can be accessed by everybody. And so I'll get into that a little bit. And so it's a little bit kind of a choose your own adventure type play environment. And you can imagine how fun that could be for everybody. And to kind of go through this, I will go around in a big circle. We are restoring the mixed use trails so that it is safe and accessible and flat. That's definitely one of our key components. We are preserving the north and south hills, number 2 and 11. And so we're not touching those. We understand that those are used during the winter times. And so that's really a big component that we are keeping. We are going to restore the connector pathway that goes north and south. And so that access can be, is free and clear and pretty straightforward. And so that's not going to also affect kind of the general uses of the present day. We are intended to have educational plantings, signage, something that really talks about what our history of the site used to be and our kind of native flora and fauna. We will restore the Shani Good Memorial to, the greatness that it used to be. We will have landscape buffers so that it is safe for everybody. So that's number 6 around the memorial. And then we also have these elements that are starting to be inside of the play space. Number 7 is a lookout. It is right in line, kind of with the Shani Good Memorial. And, you will see kind of perspectives on this a little bit later, so that will explain it a lot better. We also have balanced walkways, series of different walkways that might be for different abilities. Some might look a little bit more like stairs, and some might be hilly, so that if you're in like a wheelchair, you could kind of go up and down and experience what topography might be like. Tactile sensory walls, things that might have interesting textures, we like things that have fine motor skills. And so it's not only about movement and your gross motor. We really want to kind of play with that as well. And sensory walls are really great for even people with like eyesight mobilities. And so really trying to talk about that. And then we also have quiet nooks that are spread around. People who might have sensory disorders could really use these spaces as places to go away and be in the quiet instead of somewhere where it's really loud and active all of the time. So we've sprinkled that around, and people could have picnics in there as well and use them as special spaces. We also have sensory gardens. The two nodes that I'll talk about a little bit more in detail is the water node, and then we have a music node. Water really is accessible by everybody. It can be, you can roll in it, you can play with it. We do want it elevated as well, so that someone who might be in a wheelchair who does have issues trying to get down low could play in it. And also the sound of water is always calming. So that is kind of a really important node that we have. We do also have a musical node, which we're thinking, it's not like loud banging sounds, because obviously that would be very disruptive, but something like chimes or things that are toned that can be played there. And we've seen that done in very artful ways. And so we're thinking about that. And then we have things like tree walkways or sensory paths. And so really playing up the idea of how landscape can affect this. And so this is a little bit more in detail. We will have these on boards outside, so you can really take a look at them and look at what that might seem like. So the axon, I think, is probably the best way to see it, but you can see that, we have kind of these ribbons that go through. Some of the sensory gardens are pockets of gardens that have really textural plants or plants that smell really beautifully. And then we're also thinking about this seasonally as well. And so what does that look like in the wintertime? You might have red twig dogwoods that have really interesting color in the wintertime, and that could be something vibrant. We could have willow trees, maybe, that, you can kind of hang out underneath. We have a water node. We have some bumpy paths. We have decks that have different elevations. And of course, we also talked about graduated risk. And so what is available for those kids who have, lesser degrees of mobility issues, so that we still have things like climbing nets or balance beams that are trickier for kids to go up and down on. We have the overlook is, there it is. We do have an overlook. And so this is kind of a hill situation where you might have a little bit of an elevation gain where you could sit here and observe everything that's going on around you. And so this is really meant to be very open. We're not thinking of this as an enclosed space. And yet we will have little nodes, around the perimeter that might be a little bit quiet for people who need a little bit of a desensory moment. We have the music node, and then we have a tree canopy walkway that we'll show you a rendering of shortly. For people who might not be able to get up and down there, we do have some walkways that meander between trees that can be interesting. We have a barefoot Sentry path that can be used with people with wheelchairs as well. And so you can kind of see what that might be like when you're bumping along something like rock textures or wood textures. We do have a tunnel, a willow tunnel that kids can go through, and adults as well. And we've designed those where we have them pretty high up so that people who might be in wheelchairs can access them as well. And so this is showing some of the nodes. This might be one of the quieter nodes that people can hang out in or have a picnic in. Textural walls that, isn't meant to block views, but really provide a sensory environment. And we have a tree. This is the view of the tree canopy walkway beyond. We do have some larger climbing elements. So for those who might be more able to do such things. And then this is the other kind of walkway that might be the medium level. and then a really flat walkway that still has elements alongside it that can be very, very playful. And so again, talking about graduated risk and what that might look like. Some character images, the turf hill that is alongside the overlook that might be for climbing and rolling. We've seen, I've seen really small kids roll their teddy bear down like a hill and play with that, right? And so it can be used for very, very many different things. The elevated walkways that might have other elements that are attached to it, including climbing or sliding, and really trying to get you up to that elevation where you're in the tree canopies. That's a really cool experience. The water node and what that might look like. This one has a series of runnels where you can kind of pull up and down kind of weirs to create different pathways for water. And, you know, we can do that with rocks as well that the kids find all over. Some of the tunnels. And so the idea of being a little bit more in a compressed space. Barefoot paths, and also the tree walkway that's a little bit more accessible at the ground level. This idea of being able to weave around and create these kind of circular motions around the whole playground. Some of the paths that might happen. This one is a little bit less accessible. This one might be more for able-bodied children, whereas this might be for flatter. And so just trying to show what all of these kind of ribbons could look like. The sliding elements or the walkways that have graduated risk. Meandering garden paths, whether they be concrete and very, very smooth, or it could be a little bit more challenging. The adventure paths similarly could be something that has climbing, as well as you can see a little boy on a bike on the left one. And then the second concept. The second concept is very different from the first one, which was really about kind of stretching out the experience, perhaps. This one is really about more about central nodes. And so what would happen if we had a central node that was really plaza-like that everyone could gather in? But then we would have these spokes coming out of it that might really play into each of the senses. And so one might be sight oriented, one might be hearing, one might be smell. And so we would have all of these sensory elements. And then we would have these larger lobes that kind of come out of it. One that is higher stimuli and one that would be lower. So we'll go into that a little bit. And really, we are inspired by the Cheney Good Memorial and how that might play into this overall scheme. Similar to the first option, we aren't going to get, we aren't changing what's really working on the site right now and restoring what needs to be fixed. And so we do have the restored mixed use trail, both of the hills, north and south, the Cheney Good Memorial, and then the lawn really is the main component of the site. And I'll get into the details of the play space. We are restoring the pathway from the central node, which is right here. We do have a couple spokes. One that might be smell, the fragrant garden. One that would be wind chimes that have to do with sound. One is a picnic grove with a drinking fountain for the taste. And so you can all come here and enjoy that. But we might also supplement that with plants that surround it that might really, there is a plant that kind of smells like popcorn, people say. So we might include something like that in that space. We do have Touch, which is a tactile garden, really talking about plants like lamb's ear that's really fuzzy and fun to play with. And we're really, we really want kids to interact with these plants as well. And so that is a goal. And that's the center element. As you go south, we have the kind of the higher stimuli area where we have a large suspended net element. Nets are great in that they can be accessible at the ground level for everybody. It could be, it's very responsive. And so that is an interesting part for all abilities. And then we do have kind of balance elements in this. And we're thinking that kind of the higher stimuli area is kind of depressed mainly, so that kids aren't really falling off of things all the time. And of course safe. But then the lower stimuli area is really about different senses, discovery, kind of this idea of what does it feel like to be in a meandering space and choose where you want to go. So that in a kind of a rendering, this is the central directional signage and the plaza. We have a kind of a smell, yeah, the fragrant garden. We have musical instruments. We have, this is the picnic grove, and of course a little picnic grove for those that might need a little bit less sensory overload moments. We have a tactile garden, which might be plants that are going up a trellis as well. And so trying to provide some kind of verticality as well as a little bit of enclosure, but not hidden. We definitely don't want that. We have, these are supposed to be, I think, wind chimes, and then some discovery walks. So this is the lower stimuli area where there isn't much big climbing and, you know, large elements that really might attract the more boisterous. And then as you go south, this is the large suspended net element and balance elements surrounding it. But we do also have kind of large swaths of garden or mini paths, say you will, that could also provide different types of balance or walking environments. This is the view that we're thinking of, really loving these chimes that are kind of hung from, that are suspended, that can be kind of touched at all levels. It could be just ribbons as well. Some of the walkways that can be accessed by everyone, and we are thinking this as universally accessible, so we will have it at a slope that's not too steep, even for children, and it would go up and down and kind of come flat at the middle. And then this is the central node that would have some of the water elements, again, talking about it, you know, having the sound of water as a sensory element, and it would trickle and be a runnel element. In this option, we're thinking it's a little bit more natural, so perhaps it's boulders and kind of this idea of a river that flows through. We do have swings of all abilities, fragrant gardens, and then this is the lower sensory stimulus area beyond. So we do have all of these in the boards beyond, including the renderings, so please take a look at them after the meeting. Some of the slides that we're thinking of, which are mostly embankment slides, very safe because you can't really fall off of them. The butterfly garden nook. Some of the slides that could be carved in the mountain, that is less traditional than most. Some of the forest paths that might happen. The intersection signage in the middle that really points to all of the elements, and so directionality and kind of wayfinding is simple and easy for everybody. The nook that is kind of at the higher stimuli area. The climbing hills that might have little steppers. And then the suspended net, which really is for the higher stimuli, kind of really interesting space. And then some of the bridges that could provide play elements that go over the paths as well. And so really playing with topography and, you know, this idea of going over and under objects and people and places. So those are our two concepts. And then our two renderings side by side. And you'll kind of immediately see that ribbons, I think, is a little bit definitely more meandering and linear in a way that's kind of like if you took strings and jumbled them up. Whereas balance is a lot more of an open space. And that's Sarah. Thank you very much.
All right, pardon me. Thanks, Hannah. So, pardon me again. Now we're coming to the Q&A portion of our meeting. And so before we get into it, I'd like to let you know how we're going to use your feedback. So over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to be working on developing one single concept for the site. So we are interested in hearing what you like about both concept ideas. And as Hannah mentioned, there are boards of the plans and comment cards and an opportunity for you to engage with folks outside of the meeting hall after we're done here. So everything we hear tonight and everything comments we collect after the meeting will be incorporated into our single plan. And that's the plan that we're going to advance towards our next community meeting, which will be in June, date TBD, and a version of which we will be opening up for review by the consulting parties for the 45-day required review. So keep that in mind. But I would like to start our Q&A session with a few housekeeping notes. So we've got a microphone set up in the central aisle here. To keep the aisle clear, we're going to ask that 5 people line up at a time at the microphone. Out of respect for others, we ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I would like to remind you all, speakers included, to please be mindful of your presentation length and to please stay on point in a concise and efficient manner so as to respect the time of all in attendance. We don't have quite as many folks as we anticipated when we prepared these remarks, but still, please do try to adhere to those time guidelines. And please attempt to refrain from repeating comments that have already been made by other speakers. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Park District's project website, including the Q&A session here. The project comment form will remain open for comments following the meeting. So that's another way. If you think of something after tonight that you'd like to contribute, please do send it in. Our whole team reviews those comments and we do take them into consideration as we advance the project. So we really appreciate hearing from all of you. Finally, I think we mentioned this, there's an opportunity to review project information for both the Midway and Jackson outside in the lobby. So please take advantage of that after we wrap up our Q&A and our next steps here. And with that, I would like to invite the first speaker or participant to the microphone. Thank you. Yes, sorry. Thank you for Heather. So while the first 5 folks are lining up, I would like to point out there's a QR code up here. If you can zap it with your phone, it will take you right to our comment form on the website. So you're welcome if something comes to mind to contribute that way as well. And with that, please make your comment. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. First off, my comment is congratulations to the Park District and your team. What a great concept. We've come a long way to get to this point, and I should have started this with introducing myself as well. I'm Dwayne Bailey, the Executive Director for the Network of Woodlawn and a member of the Jackson Park Advisory Council. We're very supportive of this idea and look forward to the development of the park for recreational use. My observation, I like the balance concept, actually. I have a nephew who is an adult that is disabled. I look forward to bringing him into that space to enjoy that. My one question is, have you thought about a drop-off space? You know, so people who are in cars that have to have people who are disabled and in wheelchairs can pull in, drop them off, and then go to a parking space rather than go park somewhere away and then come back. So I'll sit and listen to your response.
Thank you. Excellent question. Heather, can I direct this one to you?
Sure. Sorry, we didn't practice passing the microphone back and forth. Thank you very much for your comment. And we actually did have a few people who asked that at our previous meeting as well. So that is something that we're looking into. We do need to talk with CDOT about how that might work. But I think that you're absolutely on point. So folks, we're obviously designing this for people with multiple abilities. And so with that comes folks who are going to need to drop off, people who are going to be in a wheelchair or maybe have other mobility issues. And so that is something that we're looking into. Obviously, we don't have have it in our concepts yet. We're kind of here this evening to kind of see which ideas might speak to people here. But thank you for your comment. That is something definitely that we will look into.
All right, next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Martha, school nurse. I'm passionate about playground safety. The University of Iowa is known for their research and work and advocacy for playground safety. So if you're not familiar, become familiar. I'm also passionate about free drinking water for children in park spaces. That's disappearing, what I'm seeing. So I'm hopeful. I'm one of the designs that you specifically pointed that out. So that please make sure that that's there. The other thing I'm passionate about is garbage. So if there can be a nook designed for garbage cans so that the park district can manage that, that would be great. There should be no tree climbing. It's very dangerous. It may be fun when you're a kid, but it's very dangerous. Minimize the signage. Kids are there to play. I mean, signage for safety and what's appropriate, age appropriate, height appropriate. I'm all for that. But explaining things, kids don't need that. Currently, someone was talking about walking spaces or trails along 59th Street. Those are sidewalks, right? Currently, they're not walking paths.
Yeah, they're wide sidewalks.
Okay, and then that sign at the end, at the very east end, you say it's going to stay. It needs some love, lots and lots of love. Current sidewalks, please, if any way you can collaborate with the Canadian Railroad to try to clean up that space. It is a storage for all sorts of things and that get lost, and it can get really disgusting. Beautiful plantings there now. And as far as stimulation, you were talking about, low stimulation, rush hour on the Metro twice a day. Those trains are running and you can't do anything about that, but just a fun fact as someone who uses that area a lot. And I think that's it. Oh, is the place going to be fenced at all, or is it all open? 3 sides of traffic.
Heather, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So we have done both. So happy to hear people's comments. Very often we do fence in play spaces, partly because if you have younger kids and you've got multiple kids you're watching as an adult, them bolting towards a road or something. So that is, we don't have anything designed yet, because again, these are really early concepts to share with you. But that is something that we'd be looking at.
Okay,
So,
again, my passion for safety.
yes.
Some kind of.
Yeah, a barrier.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So first I want to say thank you. My name is Louise McCurry. I'm founder of the Midway PAC and president of Jackson Park Advisory Council. I spent the 3 months clearing that hill so we could have sledding there. And suddenly we had kids sledding all over Hyde Park because we had a sledding hill finally. So I thank you for saving that. That was months of hard work. As one who's met with folks over the last year about disability play spaces, the thing that was most clear is the kids on the spectrum oftentimes get left out of play spaces. I love the balanced one because it has a space where kids who are on the spectrum, and instead of being overwhelmed by all the sound and the noise, can have a place that is theirs. They can run to, they can be quiet, they can appreciate. We know that in Hyde Park, we have the orthogenic school that has a lot of kids in the spectrum, and this would be an absolutely amazing place for them. In terms of seniors who are trying to walk, it's really hard to find places where you can walk and enjoy children. And this place includes a walking space for seniors as well as a walking place for kids. I tend to be the stepmother of a munchkin who is a walker. And so he gets to go to no play spaces because he can't make it into any of the slides or any of the events. This gives him a place to play and have a wonderful time enjoying water and enjoying the feelings of things on your feet and enjoying the idea of going up a hill and down a hill. And I can do it myself. Nobody has to do it for me. I really, really, really love the whole concept of being able to have a place to celebrate history. Cheney Good were residents of Woodlawn who said we can make a difference in the lives of people, and in fact, founded the League of Women Voters and got the right to vote for women in Chicago 19 years before the rest of the country. So it's a place to celebrate. And finally, I like the open play space. I've run AYSO soccer for the last 32 years. And we've had 4 soccer fields in that space where we could get a U10, a U12 and the U14 field there, and they could play for hours. So clearing the drainage, making that a space that kids can enjoy is awesome. And finally, it's about railroads. Casey Jones drove the train from Chicago downtown to the World's Fair every day. And that piece of history is something our kids will love and appreciate and understand. So it's a really precious piece of land. And it's a really precious piece that's not available for most kids, because most kids have no place to have any disability spectrum to play. This will be the place that will set the model for the rest of the city. The big question, of course, is it really requires a special staff to take care of it. We just need that special staff to be able to take care of it, because right now training someone to do that is huge, and it needs someone who can make that happen. So I urge that to go on the process, because right now we don't have that, and we could, it'd be easy to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Hi, my name is Canara Chappie. I serve on the Jackson Park Advisory Council with Louise. I'm also on the board of the Hyde Park Arts Center, and we served as a consulting party, and I got to sign the MOA on behalf of the Hyde Park Arts Center. It was a great day when that MOA was finally signed. So I want to thank all of you for all the work you've done. 2 comments. This isn't the meeting to be talking about the interpretive materials, but I love the notion that there could be some art interspersed with the signage and other things, because art is a big part of our lives, and we have a lot of public art in Chicago, and it'd be great to have that as part of what we are doing here. For the Midway, my question is, it was mentioned in passing, but what are we doing about the fact that right now that is a goose poop filled swamp that needs drainage? Do you talk about the central lawn? Are you going to do something so that it is not the kind of swamp that it is at the moment?
Sure. So I can start that. So one of the requirements of the UPAR amendment actually is to improve the drainage in that area. And I can hand it maybe to Rob to talk a little bit about how our site plan addresses that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we wanted to take a look at is how we can regrade that lawn, right, to make it a little bit more playable for the soccer or just general events. But then that would also provide new utility connections to improve the drainage, right? Because I think that's key for the whole space to make it a usable outdoor environment. And once we do that, hopefully that'll cut down on some of the.
Yes, I mean, I love geese. I know we have to protect the Canada geese, but it is an area now that, except for the sledding in the winter, it is very hard to actually do anything in that space. So draining it in such a way that it really can become usable space. And then I would also say, I actually like the ribbons, because when I look at the balance plan, I wonder if the central node, unless it has some shading area, could become a very hot space in the summer. I'm not a landscape architect, but thinking about an open plaza, you would want to have some kind of shelter or some kind of capacity to make it less hot. But thank you for all the work you were doing. It is very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next comment, please.
Hi, my name is Brenda Nelms. I'm glad the drainage question was addressed. I still don't quite understand the draining. I understand the grading on top, but I don't understand the draining below. Maybe you can explain more of that, because it is a wetland that will, I think, resurface or re-depression, whatever the right word is, without, and my money's on Mother Nature in this case, I must say. I have a little problem. I had trouble understanding the scale of this, how many feet wide, how many feet this way, that sort of thing. And then the examples of photographs of different types of things were from elsewhere and everything. So I'm pretty confused about that. I don't understand. I'd like to know what you think the capacity is here. Is it 20 kids, 200 people? What is it? Comfortably, I guess, would be my question there. And how do you see, who's your audience? Is this a magnet for everybody in the Chicagoland area? Is it serving the quarter-mile sort of neighborhood thing? Exactly what? I've never gotten a real sense of what you thought you were doing even in addressing the UPAR needs for active versus whatever, who's the audience, has never come through to me. And particularly if it's meant to draw from afar, and I think probably anything that's put there will at least once draw a lot of folks, whether it is the return element that I'm interested in. But if they're coming from afar, and particularly the emphasis has been on people with various kinds of disabilities, there's no restroom anywhere nearby. And I really think that's a really bad thing. If you can't get Metro to put one in the station, then you should get build one your own. And I'm concerned about the safety too with the cars and everything. So again, some kind of fence around that. I'm concerned about the little ones, and they do dash everywhere, and I really think it's a dangerous area.
Thank you, Ms. Downs. I'm going to break your questions into a couple of parts. The first I want to talk about is audience. Who is this playground intended for? And I'd like to pass that to Heather.
So thank you. Thanks for all your questions, Brenda. So I think we can think about, so for one, it's a public park. So as you know, with the park district, we don't preclude anybody from visiting any of our lovely parks. And I'm always encouraging people to go visit some they haven't seen before. So certainly everyone is welcome. But I think if we look at sort of the scales of some of the things that the park district has, if you think about Millennium Park, Maggie Daly Park, those are really, really big playgrounds with really big play elements that are really centrally located that, you know, we would anticipate really, really big crowds. I'm not saying that can't happen here. And I think you folks are raising a lot of things for us to think about as we go forward in the design. But I think one of the other things that the team has listened to from the comments that you brought at the last meeting is to keep the smaller scale of some of these elements so that you're not overwhelming the space as well. So I think to some extent, what we're really hoping is this is the first of one of the playgrounds that we'd like to replicate in other areas of the park district, I hope. The way that the entire really play industry has gone is multi-generational and inclusive. So a lot of the elements that Hannah mentioned in either concept really are starting to spread across the country, and just recognizing that since the passage of the ADA laws, our playgrounds are technically accessible, but we think we can do better. And how can we really make people feel included? How can we really make sure that we're designing spaces that everyone feels welcome, whether or not you're a grandma who needs to help a kid on a particular play element and make sure that it's designed for everyone, or if you're someone in a wheelchair who may not be able to have the same access to a swing, for instance. And so I think the whole industry is moving this way. So I suspect that this will end up being more of a smaller regional play space, and that I hope if we're successful here with all of your help in giving us comments on design, that this is just the first one that we will hopefully replicate in other areas of the park district, so that we're spreading out these opportunities for lots of different neighborhoods.
Thanks. And one just addition to that response is that one thing that we really loved about Site Design Group's proposal is that one of their priorities, I think, is just to make this really cool space for the neighborhood. So I think that's really a priority for us as well in this project. So Rob and Hannah, could you maybe speak, I don't know if you know dimensions of the play area offhand, but could you speak maybe loosely to capacity and size?
I would venture to guess, just from a capacity standpoint, that this is, something that can, comfortably hold, 75 to 125 visitors at a time within the space. And obviously, I think when you have smaller groups, and it's not going to feel like you're swimming in it, kind of like we are in this room right now, since we're trying to break down the space, create these unique elements and areas for people to gather.
And I think that's max capacity comfortably. I think it would take a really busy day for there to be 125 people in the space. Like a big event, for example, like the Lawn had a really large event that hosted a lot of people, and they would want to play in the space.
I would say generally the space is probably about 150 long by like 60 wide. 75 wide. We have a scale plan out there. I can measure it off, read out in the hallway, and we can talk about it afterwards.
Thank you. And we will, as we develop the plan, provide more information about how we are improving drainage and the subsurface condition at the low spot. And I don't know if we have more information on that tonight, but that's something we can certainly prioritize for our next meeting. And your note about the restroom is also on the list. Thank you. Next comment, please.
I want to thank both all the speakers and the teams. Really good, a lot of things to think about. My name's Gary Osaward, and I think keeping it fairly simple will solve some of these problems. I lean towards the concept too, because it's more rational, more easy to see where you're going and where things are going. The thing is to make sure that there isn't that problem with shade, for example. I do think that it's a good thing that they're doing this, but it's only in one corner. Mainly is keeping it open, whether people want to play soccer or just want a picnic or whatever, I think is very good. Keeping fencing to a minimum as well, especially not by the Stony Island side things too, because this is supposed to be welcoming you into before they built the elevated the railroad, it was a long thing. You could look all the way down. It was supposed to have a canal through it and everything, but to do nothing that will eliminate the sense that on one side you're Jackson Park, and the other side you're looking towards Washington Park. As for the Jackson Park things, there are a lot of things that can be done, but you have to have it probably in several places. All these neighborhoods around it are different. The park has several different kinds of rooms that people enjoy. And one way to connect them perhaps might be with some kind of history and nature trail at a certain points. You could look at a thing that would, with your like a square thing, QR code, I guess they call it now, and get up more information on it. Jackson Park did provide a video called Jackson Park in Your Pocket with different people talking about from different places in the park. That's kind of a model. And what the Historical Society has done with Tara and the Washington Park Camera Club is provide a series of then and now pictures side by side with descriptions by different people that live in the neighborhood of Washington, the Midway, and Jackson Park, and that's a model to look at too. That's on live. That's live now in hydeparkhistory.org, and you ought to take a look at that. But I think we're moving along on some of these things. But again, you may have to, because there's so many details and warning sign stuff too. It has to go slowly and not to be don't be bound up by this timetable that's there. But thank you all very much, everybody here.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Hi, my name is Gabby, and I've been saying that all of the playgrounds areas in this have been more going for younger kids than my age. The one thing I have seen is the net. I really enjoyed seeing that, but can you put in more things that is active for my age?
Thanks, Gabby. How old are you?
I am 9.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Would you like to respond or?
Yeah, Sai?
I think, some of the things that maybe weren't discussed as much in detail is that like the tree canopy walk in option 1, right? You're elevated up to the tree canopies. We're thinking of pretty large climbing elements and nets. Maybe if you can flip to that rendering, Sarah, I know it's a little bit far back.
Sorry. Is it in 1 or 2?
It's in 1. Oh, the next one. You can kind of see the large kind of climbing element at the back. And we're thinking, especially at this elevated tree walk zone, that you would have some of these tougher elements. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And so, you know, and then we might have nets that go vertically climbing at that as well. And so especially at this kind of high, you know, high stimulus, high activity zone, we're thinking of really providing connective elements there. And then some of the precedents that we have do show net, what are they called? When you traverse from one side to another through like nets or, you know, vertical, horizontal climbing. And so I think there are, we'll definitely understand your comments and we'll provide play elements that can be challenging and hard for people of your age.
But your observations are right.
Yeah, but we will, you know, as we move into the next step, we will show those in detail. Again, this is really preliminary. We haven't designed everything that goes on that tree canopy walk. And so, you know, if you come next time, we will definitely provide you something that will excite you. Thank you.
So she said, thank you. If
Thank
you don't mind, I'll take my own time. So I am Rosa. I am a big fan of all of the departments that are here and site design group as well. So I'm super excited that this is coming here. I am a South Shore resident, but I haven't always been a South Shore resident. So for me, which we have done, is we would travel from wherever we lived and we would come this way. So I like to echo some of the voices of just making it feel welcoming. A lot of us, wherever we live in other places, sometimes don't have access to just these beautiful parks. And so I always feel like it's important to just, having been on the other side, it's always important to kind of have that feeling for everyone. The other specific comments that I wanted to share, one of the reasons why we would come is for sledding. And so sledding becomes a really important piece. I know you have all the expertise to think about the actual slope and distance that you need coming down from the slopes and where that is within like the start of the design. Yeah. So that was the second comment. And third, but not least, I wonder if there was a rationale to making it so compact. I feel like it's such a huge area and there are other play areas like farther west that maybe this could be just spread out a little bit more so that there are spaces where, like you said, people can find quietness or people can spread out as needed. And so that might be something that could be considered. Maybe anyone, either the ribbons where they're just spread out a little bit more, or the balance where some of the notes just kind of spread out a little bit out, I think would still alleviate, you know, larger play area, but still give some stretch to the design overall. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks,
Big
Rosa.
fan.
Thank you.
Next comment, please.
Good evening. My name is Mark Lipinski. I'm Vice President of the Midway Plaisance Park Advisory Council. We did not sign the memorandum of agreement, and that is because, among other things, we disagreed with the selection of the east end of the Midway for UPAR replacement. I think it's good for a lot of things. I don't think it's good for this, and my advisory council said as much. There was a comment at the top of the program about there being opposition to the use of the east end of the Midway for UPAR replacement. I thought there was going to be some comment about how that was resolved. Didn't hear it. Maybe I misunderstood. But at any rate, the selection of that area was a top-down decision in 2018, into which there was no apparent public communication. It was communicated to our advisory council that it was a done deal in 2018 on 2 occasions by City of Chicago planning officials. And one of the issues here with respect to the east end of the Midway is that, well, there's a lot of traffic on either side. There were some comments about that. It's going to get worse because the whole CDOT approach to the south side, particularly in that area, is to ramp up the traffic over toward that area. And it would seem that that's inconsistent with the effort to try to bring disabled people there. People who are going to have a difficult time getting to the space. They're going to have a difficult time picking up and dropping off and picking up people over there, which makes me wonder what was the thought even behind choosing that space as opposed to somewhere else. But then again, it doesn't appear that there was a public consideration of anywhere else. We would hope to have a chance to discuss the plans and the site selection with the design team at the Midway. And I've had some email correspondence with the Park District on that subject. Look forward to having a further discussion of that with you. Also, I'll add one more thing. There was a comment about cutting down trees. I think we've had enough cutting down trees on the south side of late, and I don't think if there are any cutting down of trees that are contemplated in connection with this, I think that should be reconsidered.
Thank you. Heather and Eilish, could you please address the UPAR replacement comment? And then Robin Hanna, could you please talk a little bit about trees and tree replacement on the site?
Sure, thank you for your comments. The UPAR process was completed over a span of 2018 and finalized after a few revisions that were part of the overall public comment and feedback, and it was finalized in 2020. And that document is available on the city's public website. And I was not a part of that process in that aspect of it, but it's my understanding that for UPAR, there were a number of sites that were reviewed, including some smaller pocket parks within the Woodlawn community. And some of those locations were found to be inadequate for the sizing and the location. There's a need to have a reasonable replacement space for whatever is being lost in the UPAR process. And because where the OPC footprint was going, it needed to be more active space rather than passive space to replace the track area specifically that was going away. And there's also a proximity consideration. So the fact that the Midway was the closest space to that area that kind of fit the same acreage is the reason why the city leaned towards that as a preferred option. And that's my understanding.
The city didn't just simply lean toward it, it made the choice without community input. The only input that was allowed was during the assessment of effects, and only after the assessment of effects process was undertaken was there a report indicating various sites which the city claimed to have considered, but for which there was no community input and for which there was nothing by which no way that anyone could confirm that those sites were actually considered before the choice was made, as opposed to putting down some various sites arbitrarily in order to respond to negative comments in connection with the assessment of effects process. There was no public process. Nobody has identified any public meetings where alternative sites were actively considered and presented for consideration by the public.
Thank you. I'd like to move to the tree question.
Yeah, just to follow up on the tree question. So regarding the trees on site, I think the biggest thing that I want to make sure that we're 100% clear about is that there are missing trees along the Midway, and that is 100% our intention is to fill in those gaps, right? The historic tree alleys on either side is something that's going to be critical to our planning and design process. And so we'll be filling in those tree gaps. We're also going to be preserving trees on site as well. That is something as landscape architects that we want to make sure that we do. We want to nestle this park space or this playground space within that existing tree framework. That's not why you don't see it pushed to one side, whether it's north or south or in other areas of the park. And so that is 100% our intention is to preserve trees, not remove.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Thanks. I'm Mike McNamee, and I'm with Save Midway. And I wanted to thank the design team and the Park District for working on constructing a universally inclusive nature play space. I think it's a wonderful idea and concept, and I think it could be a good model for the city. And I'd like to encourage the design team to try to emphasize the nature. I'm concerned about looking at this. I want to know if you're trying to avoid plastic, and which a lot of parks end up being, and they're wonderful for what they are. But there's a lot of them around, and there's especially in Jackson Park. There's, I believe, 9 playgrounds that have some accessible features in Jackson Park. And I wanted to know, when I look at the paths, I'm wondering if they're all destined to be concrete. And I encourage you to look and see what you can do. I know that there's only certain things that wheelchairs can work with, but it looks to me like it ends up to be kind of a significant amount of concrete in that space. And I also encourage you to look at the dimensions. I know you were saying, you were explaining the dimensions, and maybe they're set, but it looks to me like the designs are taking up, that they could be displacing some of the open flexible meadow, which, as someone mentioned before, is really good for soccer, and we had some children's football there, and some of the other activities. And also I also encourage you to keep an eye on the Sledding Hills. So if you make this the number 3, the major north-south pathway right in front of the Cheney Good bench, if the park district is great at clearing the snow during the winter from the sidewalks on the Midway. If they end up clearing that pathway, then my kids grew up. My daughter's now here. She sledded down that hill a lot of years, and they would come to a big bump when they get to that pathway. If it's a pathway that is too close to the hill, and if it gets diligently plowed by the park district. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Sai, can you say a few words about what you're thinking about for materiality in the playground?
Yeah, I'll just chime in. So, there is probably, maybe when you look at this, the pathways may look like all concrete. I think our intention as we move forward is to provide a wide variety of surfaces for the children to interact with, right? We were talking a lot about texture earlier, and different ways to interact with that and what that can mean for the different sensory options. So that's something that will be probably a mixture of materials for the pathways. And then your other comment earlier was about plastic in playgrounds. I think that's something that we're definitely going to keep a close eye on. We don't want this to be an off-the-shelf playground that you just order out of the catalog and we place within the space. This is something that's, this hasn't really been done a whole lot before, like these really dynamic play spaces for folks with these disabilities. And so we want to make sure that we're designing that thoughtfully and incorporating natural materials and resilient materials that will kind of withstand the urban environment. So.
And, as a general, if you look at the kind of the breadth of the work, the playgrounds that we've worked on, we also tend to stay away from very traditional, very plasticky playground environments, because as you mentioned, they can kind of, look generic in a way. And so we are definitely looking at, I won't tell you that there will never be any plastics. There are benefits to it, but we will definitely limit it.
Thanks. Next comment, please.
My name is Karen Nelson. I live across the street from this on 59th Street between the railroad tracks and Stony Island. I think you guys have done a nice job thinking out some options. I think you're crazy to put a disability accessible park in this space. I think it is dangerous. And I echo previous things. But as a neighbor of this space, I'm not that excited about having little kids screaming out there all day, every day. I'm not very excited about chimes that kids can bonk on all day. I am worried about the noise. I'm worried about the increased traffic. And I don't really, I also don't understand the UPAR selection of this. I do understand landscaping this space, making it look better. I think you could do nice sensory gardens, but I think you could really dial down the play equipment quite a bit. To me, that looked like a lot of cement, a lot of plastic, a lot of paving over, a lot of structure. And I would also echo the, let's go for the natural and the landscaping and maybe the sensory gardens and dial it down. And I don't understand the space of this either, because this looks like a lot of stuff jammed in a little strip of this space. That park is not that big. So I think you have big ambitions that would be, you know, build the park you want to build, but build it in a bigger space, like farther down the Midway, you know, that little space is too small for, I think, what you want to do. I also drove by there just because I wanted to see. I live across the street. I'm not living in my apartment at the moment. It's being rehabbed. But the water on the Midway as of 5 o'clock tonight looks to be about up to your shins. That grading, you guys you're deluding yourselves. I've lived in my apartment for more than 25 years. I've lived in Hyde Park most of my life and South Shore for the rest of it. That space is really wet all the time. It is really a wetland. There is an underground stream that flows from Washington Park to Jackson Park. And I remember, you know, when the Midways, the parts that are sunken down, we would freeze those in the winter for ice skating because they were so full of water. Okay, and then they would open the fire hydrants, but there is water under there. So I would just point that out. But as a resident, I would like to hear, how are you going to keep me from being disturbed by all the kids there all the time? We already have a school next door, which is fairly disruptive. I like to sleep in on the weekends. I'd like to hear your response.
Thank you very much. Heather, could you please speak to this one?
Thank you for your comments. So I think we heard from a lot of folks about the traffic and the things that, some of those things that you brought up, which we are definitely going to take a look at. So we do have a lot of playgrounds in the park district. And I think some of what Hannah and Rob have presented tonight is to get a little bit of that balance. So there are definitely musical parks that have a lot, like Hydea Pendleton would be one, where we have musical instruments. It's intended, it was built that way. So you're definitely going to get that kind of noise. I think the things that they're talking about, and partly also, so I have a kid with autism, I should disclose that. And so the sensory nature of those really loud noises is something that you want to take into consideration in inclusive play, because those loud noises also disturb people who may be on the spectrum or have sensory needs. So I think the intent is partly also with landscaping, because when you do have some landscaping, it does dampen some of the sound as well. So they are trying to design it very thoughtfully. I completely understand that we're changing a little bit of the use of the space. And that's a little bit challenging. And I understand that. This is a pretty passive area right now. But I think because of the, as Eilish explained, I know it's hard to understand the whole UPAR concept, but part of the requirement in the memorandum of agreement was that we had to provide an active space. And so, you know, that is partly what came out of it. I do think that they are trying to be respectful of the space. And again, as some of you brought up, I think we are thinking of this as something that we hope enhances the neighborhood. So I think we're looking at more of that calming kind of element. Will it completely shut out the noise? No, I recognize that it won't. But I think we're looking for some of those elements that that are not necessarily like banging drums and things like that.
I think you could have an active space without even needing a playground. It is very focused on kids. We talked at the last meeting just about other audiences that are kids who might like to go and sit in those plants.
Sure.
I might be one of those people. So I know you guys are really fixated on the kids' playground. I think it could be an active space without necessarily being that. And I would just point out that where you decided to put this, it's the most residential part of the entire Midway. Like the entire Midway is university buildings except for around this little space, which is residents on the north and south.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Hi, my name is Christy Rawson. I am also on the Midway Plaisance Advisory Council. I'm the treasurer. I also live right there, right right between, I live on 59th Street, just to the east of the train station. And speaking of sensory elements, you guys know how loud those freight trains are, right? Because it's not just the Metro. There's not freight trains all day long, like there's Metro all day long, but those freight trains are loud. And I think this, I agree with everything that's been said. The U-Part, this is not appropriate U-Part replacement. I'm not going to go on about that because people already have. It's not safe. But you know, if we end up having to, you know, somebody gets hurt and then the whole thing gets fenced in, that's just going to be dreadful. But what I want to kind of focus on is what people keep referring to, and from my perspective, is sort of a problematic reference, this idea of, you know, the drainage problem. Wetlands shouldn't be a problem. Wetlands are only a problem when everybody wants to mow them. We could use that water to grow things. And I'm just thinking about the, you know, the very basic concept that, you know, we understand as rain gardens. They're native plants that could be planted throughout there, and that whole sort of westernmost end could be a really great natural learning space for people of all of all ages to understand what wetlands are, what they do for the environment, what kinds of pollinators and frogs and, you know, endangered creatures they would be wonderful habitat for. It's a resource, not a problem. And I'm concerned about everybody wanting, you know, to protect that whole lawn space. I like all the, I see a lot of additional new plants ideas talked about and referenced, and that makes me happy. We need to see things besides lawn. There's a real sort of lawn problem in Chicago from my perspective, and we need places for habitat for pollinators and birds. This is perfect for that. And it's, I mean, what do kids like more than frogs? I can't imagine, you know, what could be a more fun place to explore and to experiment. And there's so much opportunity for that, you know, for all of the beauty and the creativity and the real thoughtfulness that I'm seeing, you know, in the playground area. I just think this is a real missed opportunity. And I think having a lot of people designating that area as a play space is really bad traffic problem. A lot of people actually use the 59th Street Metro station to commute. So people will come up from further south, park their cars at the 59th Street Metro station and go to the loop from there. So you've actually got a lot of traffic already right around rush hour. And it's just going to be more and more of all of that. So that's my comment. Wetlands are wetlands.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Yes, good evening. Hello. I first want to say I'm a member of the JPAC Park Advisory Council, also the Grant Park Advisory Council. Also, I work with the Obama Foundation and I'm an evangelist. But I want to say I'm a mother with a son. And I live in the townhomes right across the street from the site that you're referring to. I think you have a wonderful idea. I like your floor plan. I like the wheelchairs. If you notice, I had to take a seat because I have a disability. But when you exclude people with a disability, it's just like saying they don't exist. You're not going to accommodate them. A park is made up of a family. You might not want to see that particular family member there, but they're there and they're welcome. The kids play all the time down the snow slide. It's fun to them. The ducks drink water over there, and the school children are constantly going back. That street has been congested for the longest. You can go around, you can walk down, or you can ride the bus. But during a specific time of the day, it's congested. So that's something I think that as a city family, we just have to live with, because it's going to happen. I thought that the idea was great that you have and the plan that you have, because it may be more of congestion, but people are not all in the park 24/7. When it's cold outside, the wheelchairs, the children are too much going to be out there. The ducks are not even out there. So it's only a specific time of the year that we may have all of this. And me, myself, I think it's wonderful. I think that I was looking over there the other day because I walked down there because I'm trying to strengthen my leg. So when I saw the ducks drinking dirty water, I thought about myself, do I want some dirty water? And the only thing I thought, well, maybe we can make a pond while they're making a playground for the kids and all of these things. But when you get older, you do kind of want to hear a little bit of quiet. There has to be a decision that you make. Am I going to continue to live here, knowing that this community is made up of a community of people with children, adults, seniors? That has to be my decision. But to say, no, we don't want this, I'll bring you a bunch of kids next time that will defer. They do want this, okay? They want to see the OPC come because they want to go in the new park. They like the parks that are there, but it's nothing like a kid that knows that a new park is coming. They're going to play in the new park for a while. Then they're going to get tired of that and want to go somewhere else. The seniors in the wheelchair, they're going to go around that park and it's, oh, I made it. Oh, I made it. Okay, let's go hang somewhere else unless they got a chess game going or a checker game going. Then they're going to. So I don't think that it's going to be a problem at all. But to leave it the way it is, that to me is my problem because we constantly building up all over the city, beautifying other neighborhoods. And I want to say, why not ours? So thank you so much and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Next comment, please.
My name is Jim Aldworth. I've worked in Woodlawn since about 99 to 2009, so about 20 years. I transferred recently. So I do like this plan. I think that being in the neighborhood and seeing different aspects, it will help the kids. The more choices that the kids will have, that'd be great. Got a couple of questions. So one is about the traffic calming. The next meeting, or can you integrate a CDOT person on the panel the next time?
Yeah.
It seems like that would be where you kind of need to go because traffic calming is their job. And then the second thing I have is what are the lighting considerations? Migratory birds, is this the path, the north and south paths, are they going to be 24-hour, like the lakefront path, or is it going to be regular park hours? I think especially just like, where are the lights? Is it going to be bright? Is it going to be safe after dark? Is it going to be overly bright, like some parts of the Plaisance where it's going to be shining into people's windows? I don't think that's been addressed, or I didn't see anything about the lighting at this place.
Thank you. Sure. So we will invite CDOT to our next meeting, and then to speak about lighting, Heather, can I, in park hours, can you start that one off?
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't know that we fully have a lighting plan just yet, because as you know, and thank you so much for your comment, because all these things are important for us to consider as we go forward. And you know, I mean, we need to talk about it internally as a team, but I think the lighting that we would probably be leaning towards is the historic park lights that you see. So part of the balance that we have to achieve under the memorandum of agreement is that we are restoring the historic elements. And part of that is sort of bringing back that older park character. So those plantings that you see in the corner of where number 12 is, and I'm not seeing number 3 is over there, those are required under the agreement because those were the historic planting areas. So much like that, I don't think we'd be going for like the big sports lighting that we see on the new track and field, which we acknowledge is there, and it's partly, you know, so that we can make sure that people can play after hours. This is intended to be regular park hours. And I think that we would be going for lighting that make sure that it's a safe space, but you're not going for the big, you know, large, tall elements. That would be against sort of the historic character of that particular area. Oh, and dark sky. Yeah, I'm going to let Rob address the dark sky.
Sorry.
As he's
I'll keep this short, but yeah, so this needs to be light fixtures that would very much be in keeping with the historical character of Midway. Dark sky compliant light fixtures. That's something as landscape architects and designers that we're always trying to, you know, reduce light pollution and make sure that this is an ecologically sensitive area. And so making sure that they're dark sky compliant, and then obviously the timers for safety and making sure that it's a safe space at night is something that are kind of the three things that we'll be focusing on as we get further into the design and engineering.
Right, and full cutoff as well, meaning that it won't shine sideways or up.
And just to
Shines
clarify,
down.
Heather, regular park hours are 9 to 11 by ordinance?
It might be 6 to 11.
6 to 11.
Yeah, we'll have to check. So sorry, let me try the mic real quick.
So each park has its own hours. Generally speaking, they're 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. We will, for our next meeting, we'll verify from Midway. That's a general broad park hour for around the city. There are occasions where for some reason in an ordinance or a policy at the park district, they're shorter. But I don't know of any that are beyond 11 p.m. So usually it's shorter. So like the playground by my house, for instance, it's closed at 9. And that's kind of the hours, early in the morning till about 9 o'clock. Yeah.
And oftentimes there's security lighting that stays on beyond those hours, but the full lighting is sometimes not on all night. So next comment, please.
And perhaps the last one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Barbara Kennan. I live in Hyde Park. What I don't understand in this is how it's connecting with the Obama Center and what are the access points that you're anticipating people are going to use to go to this park? And I want to reiterate that traffic is going to get even more when they close Cornell and they're pulling all that cars onto Stony. So in addition to the U of C, people that are commuting every day, it'll be a lot more. So I'm unclear on how the places are going to be connected and where you're thinking most of the people are coming from. And I guess also where people are parking. So can you, I guess, explain that a little bit now? And then if there's a CDOT person the next time, that'll be helpful too.
Yes.
Oh, and I had one more question. Sorry, I'm just going to throw it in. If you have an idea of how many trees will be put back into the landscape ultimately when you're done, that would be helpful to know. Oh, and lastly, there are lots of other underutilized areas of Jackson Park, especially along the southwest, which could accommodate something like this, because this is definitely not underutilized anymore, this area.
Thank you very much. So a couple of points. So traffic, we haven't dived into traffic in exhaustive detail yet. So we will talk to CDOT and make sure that they're at our meeting next time, and we will have some more information about traffic counts and kind of the best places for access. Site, do you guys have any preliminary thoughts about accessing the park to share tonight?
I would just add that, with park access, right, we're going to be rebuilding those multi-use trails or the sidewalks on the north and south side of the park, right, and that'll connect along the entire Midway. But then we also have, signalized crosswalks at the northeast corner and the southeast corner of the space as well to get across Stony to the Obama Presidential Center. And so I think we maybe have a further conversation with CDOT maybe about some maybe lay-by or drop-off opportunities. Maybe we can have a further discussion about some pedestrian safety concerns or issues we might want to bring up at Stony to enhance that connection.
Thank you. And then further to your point about parking, that is also on our list to study further, as well as the drop-off area, kind of at the same tier as bathroom access as well. These are all really important support functions for this space that we understand that we have to address. We don't have details to share tonight, but it's something we will address.
Hey, Sarah, one quick thing I wanted to add to that, and thanks for the comment about, thinking about the connectivity in the area. So I think Rob addressed the idea of the crosswalks and everything. I know we're looking at just this space. The Obama Center is also designing a play space on their campus. So when people ask well, where do you think these people are coming from? We're not trying to compete with that space by any means. I think you've heard our intent here is that we really are looking for more of the local interest and designing something more in scale and keeping the people from the neighborhood can come to. So I recognize that people might be interested in our playground, but I'm also not naive that they're also going to have a big designed playground that is going to be of interest to people, certainly coming from, other neighborhoods and other areas. So, and they have a parking garage underneath their space that will accommodate those folks.
I'm going to double dip if I can, Sprinton Elms again, since there are a lot of empty seats. I'm just pretending I'm in a different one. It has to do with your budget. I wanted to ask about in the on the Park District website, it mentions $3 million, which was there from the beginning. So I don't, before it was planned. So I don't know. I mean, I just realized I don't know if that's the top level or not. The reason I'm asking is there was a children's playground, nature playground designed for this space about a dozen years ago or so by some initiative from the university and MSI together, who had a donor in mind. And they had what I heard was $6 million budget for that. The donor said no or go away or whatever, and it never happened. But it made me think about if that was what was needed a dozen years ago, is $3 million enough to do what you need to do? I'm going back to the drainage problem, which is, I agree, not a problem. And I would love to have that wetlands saved and nurtured and become the resource that it could be. But I'm just wondering whether you really, how constrained are you, not constrained are you on this?
So 3 million is our budget. It's a generous budget for a playground in general. And I think it's something that we feel like we can do something really great here with the resources we have. We don't have either of these concepts priced out tonight because they're still very schematic. So after we get feedback after this round of community engagement, we will start sharpening our pencil on numbers, understanding the cost for the drainage improvements as well as the cost of the play space improvements. So we will follow up with more information in that next month when we're back.
Yeah, I would add one more thing, Sarah, too. I think I recognize the plan that was put together with the University of Chicago from a dozen years ago. It was a lovely plan. I think they were using more of the space. Again, because we're being asked to also keep a soccer field and some open space. And I think a lot of folks said that they do like some of the passive elements. We're not using as much space there. So that can also add into a little bit of the budgetary differences. But fair comment, we will, part of the budget also, as I think Sarah was getting to, is your feedback. So we want to hear kind of what design elements you like. Right now we have this $3 million budget. Depending upon how the design comes out, that definitely affects the number. So we hit, a number in our budget. And then as we start getting closer, it gets more refined as the design gets farther along. This is a very conceptual, place right now.
Thank you. And last comment of the evening, please. Thank you.
So I just want to add a little bit of a reality to what we're talking about. From 1989 until 2015, we actually had soccer teams playing every afternoon after school on that part of the Midway. People parked there. We had 4 teams, we had as many as 15 kids per team, which means 60 parents were finding places to park their cars, and they found them. We had not so much problem with drainage until the University of Chicago, in their ultimate wisdom, decided that they would put a children's garden in the middle of the drainage hole that actually drained the water from the Midway. And so therefore, we used to have nice drainage. It would go down the middle and the limestone, the water would disappear. We no longer have that because unfortunately they stopped up the hole. And that's a problem we dealt with. But there's nice drainage underneath that worked well for years. Secondly, in terms of lighting, people go home when it's dark. So if you're worried about people being in the park at night, I can tell you our kids and their parents went home to have dinner when it got dark. And so having people out in the park at night, less likely to happen because kids who are special needs, kids who have to go home and do homework, won't be in the park at night. They'll be home doing their homework and having fun. So we've done it. We've had kids out there for about 30 years playing soccer. The Wolfpack came out this summer because their fields were being instructed. We had 150 kids, which I just find amazing, playing on all 4 quadrants that their parents found parking. Their parents brought their lawn chairs and sat there till dark, and at dark, everybody went home because you go home and you do homework, it's dark. So concerns about lighting, concerns about parking, we've been there, we've done it, we know it's doable and workable. And now we have this amazing thing in a city that used to have the orthogenic school right on the Midway, literally right across the street from this place. Becomes this wonderful place that kids with special needs, kids who with special needs will have a place to play. People will have a place to bring their kids. Parents who aren't able to get around can come and enjoy. This is going to be an absolutely amazing place. We know we can handle the parking because we've done it. We know we can handle the water because we've done it. We know we can handle the number of kids because at night kids go home. It's only going to be a win-win for us because we have the opportunity to do something really meaningful for kids who haven't had it done for them before. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we're coming up at the end of our meeting, so I'm going to very quickly review some next steps. Bear with me while I get to the slides. So we are working on a timeline defined by the MOA. And so I'll come back to this. So next steps for us is to work towards this first 45-day consulting party review period. And so that means that we're going to take what we heard tonight and any comments that we get through the website over the next couple of weeks into account, and we're going to evolve one concept. We're going to come back to you, the community, in June, date coming soon, to review that concept, collect further feedback, incorporate that feedback into a plan that we then open up for consulting party review. So it's going to be that part's going to happen pretty quickly. We will be back in June so that we can make our deadline of wrapping up concurring parties and public input by the end of this year. So this is a general schedule that we put together. This will be a slide with this presentation on the website tomorrow. A couple of things that I would ask of you all. We are keeping the comment form open indefinitely till the end of the project, but we do need to hit certain benchmarks for our schedule. So this presentation, as I mentioned, will be posted tomorrow. The video of this meeting, including all of the comments, will be posted shortly thereafter. We're asking for comments on these two concepts. Anything in addition to what we collect tonight to be into us by May 20th. If you think on something on the 21st and send it in, we'll still read it, but we would like to collect the bulk by the 20th so that we can keep moving our process forward. So we will send out an email reminding folks of that to our distribution list later this week, so everyone will have the information. And please keep checking the website. Hopefully you guys are familiar with the comment form that we have. This is where we just collect everyone's comments as well as their email addresses. So if you're interested or you have a friend that's interested in signing up to receive regular communications, this is the way to go. You'll get on the list. So that concludes our formal presentation for tonight. Oh, stickers. Oh, stickers. Yes. So no, this is Midway specific. Thank you. That is an excellent question. So on that featured capital project page, when you go to that page, you'll see a bunch of pull down menus. One is for Midway, and there's a link in there for the comment form. And then this QR code will direct you there too. That just funnels all of comments, Midway specific comments, into a specific database. There's also one for Jackson. So if you want to submit specific questions about the Jackson plan for interpretation, that's up there too. Please do. We would love to hear from you. That process, we're just getting started. We need to know who we should be talking to. So really interested to hear from you all. Thank you. And I think, okay, so in the entry lobby area, there are two tables set up, one for comments on Jackson, one for comments on the Midway comment or the Midway plans. So please do stop by. I think everybody got a sticky dot on the way in, and you can grab one on the way out. If you feel like voting your preference on the boards, please go ahead and stick your sticker on there. If you have any feedback that you'd like to jot down, we've got some comment cards out there too. So thank you, everyone. Please feel free to take a look at our boards, and we look forward to seeing you again in about a month. Thank you.